Oh, this one actually sums it up pretty well. No, I won't sell. I'm Matt Thomas with Baird & Warner Real Estate. I help buyers, sellers, and investors find housing here in Chicago and around the country every single day. And today, I want to talk about a pretty basic question in theory. Is it a good time to buy a house? I think there's conflicting data, conflicting news, conflicting stories, depending on who you talk to, depending on how their experience went. And I would like to think that there is a correct answer to this. It either is or is not a good time. And I know, inevitably, there are variables for each city, each market that are going to highly influence this answer. But let's just take it at a very simple level. Is it a good time or is it not a good time? I'm going to present the data. You can ingest it how you choose and hopefully use it to make some good decisions moving forward. Now, if you ask pretty much anybody right now about the housing market, particularly people who are looking at it from the outside looking in, the feedback is overwhelmingly negative. Unless you're a seller in a market where things are just flying and you happen to be maybe downsizing where you don't have to get involved in this crazy buyer market, you're having to take some form of loss or pain or something along the way. There's really just no two ways about it. And you can see this pretty much anywhere. It's not only the sentiment of news stories coming out, most of which are talking about potential housing crises or how prices are set to fall in certain markets or how people aren't moving or maybe how people are moving. They're trying to get out of their cities. Not a lot of super positive real estate news right now on the commercial or the residential front. If you just turn to social media and you look through comments, picking 3 random ones from my most recent videos, people are saying, if I sell my home, I won't be able to buy another home in the same area at the same price. What's the point? I'd rather spend the money on upgrades. There's a 0% chance that I will sell my place for any amount just to have to try and find an overpriced house at 7% or more. I bought my house when interest rates bottom out. Oh, here's a good one. Sums it up pretty well. No, I won't sell. These are the types of comments, these are the type of feedback that I'm getting when I talk to people about the housing market, and I understand it to some extent. People look at this market and the stories that are coming out of it are pretty brutal in some places. Here in Chicago, for example, we have an inventory crisis. We had an inventory crisis leading into COVID. We were pretty low, and now with the demand that came from unnaturally low interest rates, we haven't really caught up, and we are seeing this stubbornness, this avoidance of moving in sellers, particularly if they're locked at really low interest rates. The market itself is in a state of flux, but not in a state of flux fast enough or in one direction enough that it's driving behavior. Ultimately, interest rates are hovering around 7%. If you get lucky, you'll see 6.5. If you get unlucky, you'll see 7.25. This is the range we're at and have been at for several months. It doesn't appear in the immediate near future that that's going to improve. So buyers making decisions have to just accept this is the interest rate that you have to deal with. It's going to be roughly 7%. Add a quarter point, subtract a quarter point, however you feel most comfortable. That's a safe number to use in your budgeting right now if you're buying for the end of the year. As of August, home prices are still on the rise in most neighborhoods. That's not surprising. Again, there's nothing for sale. We're in an inventory crisis for a lot of the city. And when I say that, numbers mean everything. So a balanced market. We would like to see at least 3 months inventory, ideally closer to 6 months inventory. Meaning, if today nothing else lists in Chicago and only what is on market gets to sell until we reach 0, it should take us 3 to 6 months to sell out of inventory if we're properly supporting the demand with the market. Right now, most neighborhoods are hovering around 1 to 2 months inventory. So it's really low, meaning it's super competitive for buyers who are trying to get active. If you're a seller, yeah, great, you can take advantage of this activity, although admittedly in the summer it is slowed down significantly. But you can still take advantage of that, probably make a little bit more money than you thought. The kick side of that is you have to then go buy something. And once again, unless you're downsizing, you're getting right back into a competitive pool, you're getting right back into the same interest rates, and it can be a very difficult time to make decisions. I don't believe that interest rates should be the reason you don't buy a home. We have no control over where interest rates are going to be in a year. And if you see a home that fits your needs right now and you can afford it at the interest rate today, even if that interest rate feels high, I think that's a great buy opportunity. People sleep on the fact that when interest rates are low, It's the most competitive marketplace that exists. That's why when interest rates were at 3%, there were 18, 20, 30 offers on properties. Your ability to succeed, your percentage likelihood of succeeding goes way down when there's 18 or 20 other offers on the table. Whereas now interest rates are higher, it's a little more competitive. Many of those buyers are going to be priced out. If you can still afford that home, you can make a strong bid in a less competitive pool, and then you just wait for a refinance opportunity. If it doesn't come, if rates are at 9% next year, hey, guess what? You still got your dream home, you locked rates that you're comfortable with, and you ride out the storm until rates come back down eventually, which they most likely will. If they go down in the next year, you refi, you're in a place that you love, maybe even your dream place, and you're at a rate that's below what you're comfortable with because you were comfortable with it in the first place. Strategy is everything. Your approach is everything. Your mindset is everything. If you go into it thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to buy right now because interest rates are high, you will talk yourself out of the decision before you even evaluate the market. If you look at the marketplace and figure out realistically what you can afford with the interest rates today, then you can make accurate decisions on whether or not that market meets your criteria. Maybe it isn't the right time for you to buy, but you don't know until you ask the questions the right way. On the plus side, inventory is improving slowly. We're starting to see more listings come on market, particularly as we get through some of the slow months of summer and back into a time when people are focused. But that's in Chicago, it's neighborhood specific. In many cities, it's neighborhood or city specific. It's not a universal truth. I can tell you that inventory in the United States is like an all-time critical low. As of this morning, as of the time I'm making this video, inventory is at the historic low it's been at in 97% of major cities across the United States. So when I say inventory crisis, it's not just Chicago. This is a nationwide problem, and it's really not that difficult to track. We had more homeowners, first-time homebuyers in particular, buy or refinance during times when rates were really low. They're now locked into these assets with really low rates, and they're afraid to make change because they have to accept the current market conditions. And I completely sympathize with that. What drives change? Well, basically when life becomes so undoable, you have to make change. That's job change, having another child, that's getting married, that's getting divorced, that's moving or relocating for whatever reason. There are many things that drive life decisions beyond pure financial reasoning. So there are still people in the marketplace, buyers and sellers, who are making the best out of the market that does exist. We started this video with one thing in mind though. Is it a good time to buy a house? Right now, with the inventory as low as it is, it's a competitive marketplace. You need to accept that as home buyers. Interest rates are variable, but hovering around 7. Accept that, use it to make decisions when budgeting for the home that you're considering. But neither of those should dissuade you from getting involved in the marketplace. Intense competition isn't a reason to not buy a home. I mean, what's the alternative? Renting? Because that market is equally, if not more competitive, and pricing has only gone up. So ultimately, you can't just say universally that, hey, it's too competitive, don't buy a home. I think that's the wrong decision, particularly if you're in a market like Chicago where rent has been increasing steadily with rapid jumps. I've talked to clients who have had 10% increases on their rent every single year for the last 3 years. It's absurd, but it is happening, and we don't have protection for them, so they have to make decisions. When they look at other options, those options are equally expensive. Might be time to invest their money in an asset, and at that timing could be right for them, regardless of the interest rate and regardless of the inventory levels. It's a very personal decision. I think maybe the best way to answer the question, is it a good time to buy? Let's look at some pros, let's look at some cons. Pro buying right now, home prices are high, but they're rising. So getting in now might still be an opportunity, depending on your marketplace, to get a great value opportunity. Think about this. Seasonality is always existing in real estate. Here in Chicago, for example, we have a really strong spring market. Summer prices are lower than the spring, and then we have a little bit of a rebound back to fall. Fall is not quite as strong as spring. Summer is not quite as strong as fall, and winter is the weakest of all. So you have this stack rank between the seasons, and in some neighborhoods, that could be a 5% swing in value or more. It really just depends on the neighborhood and what's happening in the sales volume. So take all that into account and separate it from the fact that we have low inventory. If you're looking to buy right now, you could get a great deal in the summer. No, it might not be as great a deal in the winter, but the downside of waiting till winter is We don't know where interest rates are going to be, and I don't know where pricing is going to go holistically. Yes, it might come down seasonally, but if the major trend line is up overall, it might be net neutral in 6 months, meaning that you'll just be buying at a higher rate for the same cost, which means you get less home for the same amount of money. All of this is hard to make decisions on because unless you know something I don't, none of us have a crystal ball and we can't future-proof that way. So you have to use the information that's in front of you right now. That could equally be seen as a con as well. Home prices are high, and in some markets, let's say you're in Phoenix or you're maybe in Austin, there's a legitimate chance that a market correction or crash is coming in the foreseeable future. So for you in that market, it might actually make sense to wait if there are legitimate risks that housing prices are going to reset to some lower threshold. Here in Chicago, I don't see it. There's no data to support that. So waiting to buy, I don't think puts you in a more likely position to find lower pricing. I don't see it happening anytime in the near future. Inventory levels are low right now, and that can be a con. Your options are going to be limited. You might even be forced to consider very few homes depending on the community because there's just nothing for sale. And, oh, by the way, what does come on market will probably have multiple offers, will probably be pretty competitive. You're going to have to make quick decisions. There is a legitimate risk that you look right now and just don't see options that work for you. It's not something that's necessarily controllable, but it is a legitimate risk and something that happens to many buyers. If it does, all you can do is keep looking, refine your criteria if it makes sense to include more options, and hopefully you'll find something that fits for you in the near future. But you don't know unless you get organized and start looking. So take that con of it being harder to find a home and use it to motivate you to actually get started in the process earlier. A pro of buying right now is you can start building equity regardless of what's happening in all of this. Again, if you're making decisions the way that I would make decisions, which is, can I comfortably afford this home? Does this home meet my criteria? If you start with those decisions, again, none of that asks what the interest rate is right now. None of that asks how many homes are for sale. You're making individual decisions based on this specific scenario. If you can afford it at the interest rate that exists in the market today and it services your needs, you can make some really good decisions. And if you do make those decisions and invest now, you can start building equity in that home, regardless of what the interest rates do. Maybe they get lower and you can refinance. Maybe they don't. But at least you're making payments in that asset. You're starting to develop equity. We've just talked about how, at least here in Chicago, prices don't look like they're coming down. So if you get in now, you start to not only build equity in your asset, you start to see appreciation in that asset over time. This is a really good opportunity for some people to get active. All this talk about competition, including this video, will scare some people off. There's no two ways about it. They're going to hear limited inventory, intense competition, interest rates around 7, and it's going to be overwhelming. They're not going to get active. I can't control that. You can't control that. But what that creates is an opportunity for those that are active to take advantage of the marketplace. So spin this in a way that makes sense for you. Use the numbers that exist, use the inventory that exists, and make educated decisions using that information. Don't just write it off because of the interest rate. Don't just say you're not going to find a house because there's nothing for sale. I'm not here to fearmonger. Don't listen to anybody who is. Make educated decisions. Now, a con of all of this is I can't guarantee what I'm saying. The housing market is unpredictable. Could home prices in Chicago drop in 6 months? Yes, they could. Do I think they will? No, I don't, but they could. And that's a legitimate risk. You can't perfectly time the market because we don't have all the variables in front of us. All you can do is make educated decisions and focus on what's in front of you. There is a risk. You could lose value. You could buy your home and it depreciates slightly. You could buy your home and walk into unnecessary costs you weren't prepared for. Maybe repairs or flooding recently. God, everybody got water in Chicago. There's a lot that can go wrong. So if you're going to make decisions, make sure that you're intelligent about your financing and your preparation for those decisions before you actually put pen to paper and sign a contract. In my opinion, the decision to buy a home is an extremely personal one. And while it might be easy for some to say, interest rates are crazy high, I'm locked at a low rate, who'd be dumb enough to sell right now? It is way different if you're in a scenario where life is pushing you to make different decisions. I'm one of those people. I lived in a 900 square foot condo with my 90-pound dog for years and finally made the decision that it wasn't fair to him, it wasn't fair to me, it wasn't fair to my partner, it wasn't fair to our now new dog to live in that tight of space. I needed a yard, I needed to expand, I wanted a garage, I wanted to start my life in a single family home, and I made efforts to do that. Yes, I made sacrifices. I got a smaller home than I would have if I had bought 3 years ago. but I found something that worked for me, that I'm comfortable with financially, even with current interest rates. Hopefully one day I can refi down, and now I'm servicing my life in a way that is comfortable. You're gonna have to make these decisions for yourself, and one of the benefits of working with a real estate advisor is they can help you do it, understanding the variables you might not understand. My job in this transaction is to give you the market dynamics so that you can make decisions about what you need to accomplish. There's not a wrong way to approach this. If you need to rent or you want to buy or whatever the decision might be, I don't think it's a bad time to be in the buyer's market. It's just a competitive time, and it might be harder than it was 2 years ago. Accept that, move through the variables that they exist, and make smart decisions for your personal circumstances. If I can help you, get in touch. My email's below. You can schedule time on my calendar anytime. I love having conversations with buyers, particularly buyers who don't know they're buyers yet. Maybe they're making a decision about renting or buying or moving or whatever it might be. I like to be the sounding board to help you through those decisions and to help you understand what options actually exist in front of you. If you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up. Please subscribe for future videos and share it with somebody who might be in a position to make decisions. Again, don't let fear rule the day. Start with data and use it to make decisions. Good luck.